Going through a few of the sort of preliminary calibration checks to make sure the thing works fairly sort of accurately before I sort of delve into seeing if anything needs replacing. One of the tests is to connect it up to its calibration point, which is this calibration point here, which is the tapping of the mains transformer, which is a 50 hertz sort of ramp output. Now it says you can use 50 hertz, 60 hertz, or if you're using 60 hertz, or 400 hertz if you're running off an aircraft supply. So what I did was I connected it up to my Roden Schwartz audio generator and gave it a 500 hertz supply to check the calibration, because it gives you a sine wave rather than a sort of like a ramp, so it's easier to see. And unfortunately the graticule's not working at the moment. We need to sort that out, but I don't know if you can see here. Let me just get it into the right position. But it's the torch will stay working. Come on, stupid thing. It's not too bad. It's probably slightly fractionally out, but it's you know, with parallax from the graticule, it's pretty good. So if you look at the left-hand top amplitude on the graticules in line, if I bring this camera in line, it's slightly off on the right, but that's pretty good, you know. So that's calibrated 500 hertz on the 200 millisecond time base, so that works well. What I did, it does actually tell you to do it on this channel 2 as well and check the amplitude. I'm not worried about the amplitude at the moment. I want to get the time base circuit working correctly. And what I found was when I was on channel 2, it's not so bad now, but I was having a big job trying to get it to trigger properly on channel 2. And I think all it is this sticky switch here. You can see it's a bit jumpy. There's a bit of aliasing going on with the camera, but you can see the waveform's a bit jumpy, and the trigger adjustment doesn't make an awful lot of difference. But if you go back to triggering off channel 1, it's rock steady. It triggers really nicely. Where are we? He says that's not triggering at all now. Why is that not triggering at all? I'll put that on alternate. Get this out of the way so you can see. So you can see you've got a clean triggering here. These vertical bars that you're seeing across the screen is the refresh rate of the camera. I might get that out of the way. There you go. There's a bit of 50 hertz wobble on there. Not too worried about that. But the triggering's rock steady, no problem at all. But if I go back to channel 2 and set the trigger to channel 2 and bring this back, every now and then it loses its. It seems to be getting better actually, but it's every now and then it does sort of get a bit twitchy, and you can see it's jumping around there now. So I'm not sure what that is. I don't think it's a capacitor or anything. If you just the trigger stability, actually it's starting to improve. It could be just lack of use. So I'll probably have to run through a few of the calibration procedures on the triggering circuit. I've got the manual here, and it's actually quite a good manual. It sort of explains what to do and various things you should check before you actually start twiddling about the controls. There's the calibration section here. It's readily available to download online. This is the gain check for the channel, the vertical amplifiers. Presently I'm not that bothered about those. As I say, I want to get this circuit working properly. I had a quick check of the amplifier gain. It looks pretty good actually, so there's no reason why it should need adjusting. But I think it looks like the majority of this is going to be cleaning the pots up, just probably a fine tweak of the vertical amplifier, the horizontal sweep, to get that little bit better in line. Maybe adjustment of the trigger, but it appears to be working pretty well. It's quite interesting they say here about the chances of getting a high voltage belt off this thing when it's turned off. I know most people who've watched on TVs know this, but these cathode ray tubes, just because you turn them off doesn't mean that there's no voltage on them. And I know a lot of YouTubers like Shango066 say that it would just give you a love bite. Well, it probably would give you a love bite if it's if you're sort of 16 years old and you've got a tough, strong heart. But you want to be careful with these things, because what it is when you turn these off, there's a coating on side, or inside or the outside of the CRT, which acts as a big capacitor to basically smoothen out the rectified HV. And that stores up the charge and doesn't always bleed back through this HT lead. So if you disconnect this, you can find yourself with a really nasty electric shock because the capacitor stored up sort of 5 kV. It probably wouldn't kill you, but it's really quite unpleasant. And I've had it once, and it threw me across the room. So it's not something that you really want to do because it just knocks your confidence. I mean, yeah, it probably won't kill most people, but it's worth bearing that in mind. You have to bear in mind that you're working with very high voltage here. You're talking about probably 10 kV on this anode cap, and I know a lot of people are blasé with it, but I take it, I respect it, and I don't want an electric shock off something like this. These things with the cathode ray tubes are very dangerous, and bear in mind that if you don't know what you're doing with one of these, or anything with high voltage inside it, obviously don't touch it. But you can see it's working. It's pretty stable at the moment, so I think we're just going to go through with some pot cleaner. I'll do that tomorrow night. It's been the hottest June 21st since 1976, and I can vaguely remember that. It's been nearly 33 degrees here at around Gatwick Airport, and the workshop here is still at outside it's reading 22 degrees, and in the workshop it's probably 27, 28. So it's enough for tonight. But this is just a bit of an update on what's going on. You can see it's coming along nicely. Actually, I've blown all the dust out as well, so it's all nice and clean in there. Just need to go through, check everything. All the components inside seem to be fine. All the capacitors are running cool. We'll go through and do a calibration on it.